I've been the luckiest person in the world. From a very early age, I loved paintings and I loved art. I began to realize that I might like to become a painter when I grew up. This is a portrait of me at the age of 9. I don't look like this anymore, unfortunately. I'm Gilett Griffin. I was sent to a private school in Massachusetts called Deerfield. The street was 1 mile long, and families there had land grants that went back to 1671, and they were farmers. And I began collecting early New England children's books. Everything went back to children's books, and why my ancestors looked so severe. What did they read? And they read hellfire things. While I was at Deerfield, I got to know a painter, Elizabeth Fuller, and when I decided I was going to become a painter myself, she said, Gillette, people don't know how to draw anymore. She said, why don't you do a lot of drawing? And so I thought about it myself, and I thought, well, why don't I illustrate my letters? And so that began a whole life of illustrating letters. See, I went to Yale as an art student, thinking I was going to become a painter. And I began to realize that there was something in the 20th century called photography. I was always fascinated by drawing and painting, even though I knew that it was sort of archaic at that point. I felt that I should do it. If I can do it, I should do it. Why not? A very traditional art school, and suddenly there's a revolution. And Joseph Albert's from the Bauhaus came in, and things changed, and a lot of people were missing. And there was a brand new man teaching graphic arts, graphic design. And I began to wonder what was going to happen to me. And a man named Alvin Eisenman. And Alvin was a designer, brand new designer for Yale University Press. And Alvin, I was standing in line waiting to sign up for his class. And he asked me what I wanted to do, and I said I wanted to print a book. And he said, what kind of book? And I said, a children's book. He said, will it be illustrated? I said, yes. He said, well, who will illustrate it? I said, I will. And I wrote the thing out one weekend. Next weekend, I did all the illustrations for it. And it took me 9 months to print it, and I went nuts. I hated mechanical things. I remember myself running around screaming in the building with scaring the bats and stuff in the art building. And it was about a house that had an attic full of mice and one little mouse that misbehaved. And it made one of the 50 books of the year in design. And that changed everything. It changed my life. I didn't even know what that was all about.
It's a very charming book, Gillette.
Rumors had it that I would take my bicycle to Bridgeport, which is quite a drive, just to get a cheaper haircut than I could get in New Haven. That wasn't quite right, but I did go to the cheapest barber I could find. On the way one day, I passed a junk shop full of dust, dead bees, flies, etc. And in the middle of everything was a tiny little figurine. And it looked ancient. And I went in and asked the price, and it was 25 cents. So I went all out and blew it. I didn't know anything about it, but it changed my life. It was absolutely extraordinary. And I began to look at things made in ancient America and realized that there were extraordinary works of art. I brought it into my class at some point, and there was only one person there interested in ancient American material. He was a farm boy from Stamford, Connecticut, who was plowing up Indian arrows. And I showed it to him, and he said, take it to George Kubler. I had no idea who George Kubler was. I took it to him. He let me sit in on an hour and a half of looking at pictures of pre-Columbian art and architecture. And at the end of it, he looked at the piece and said, well, I can't be sure, but I said, I would say it's 4th century BC, Valley of Mexico. And I thought, God, for a quarter, that's not bad. Anyway, that started me on collecting. And before that, I collected early New England children's books and a few things. But suddenly, I was able to collect ancient art. And he opened up a letter and handed it to me. And he said, read this. Read it. It was a letter from a man at Princeton, at the head of the university press, and outlining a job in graphic design, graphic arts, and saying, do you know of anybody that would be ideal for this? And I said, Alvin said, what do you think? I said, God, it might take me 20 years, but I know what I want to do. And so he said, well, everybody, the university librarian, dean of the graduate school and so forth, everybody thinks that you're the only person for it. He said, can you grow a beard? And I said, sure. He said, grow one. He said, do you have a gray pinstripe suit? I said, no. He said, get one. Anyway, I came down to Princeton for an interview. And at the beginning of the interview, they said, we have a lot of candidates. We can't let you know for a while. I said, I couldn't care less. By the end of it, they said, we'll let you know soon. I got back to New Haven and found a telegram saying you've got the job. So I came to Princeton in 1952, with the most beautiful office in the whole university, and extraordinary material. And anyway, that was the beginning of my career as curator of graphic arts. Went over there and had a very, very wonderful evening. At the end of it, he was leaving the table, and I said, let me do the dishes. And he said, ach, in Europe, the men never do the dishes. And anyway, I helped them dry the silver or something like that. And Elaine Dukas, his housekeeper, said, did the professor show you his bird? I said, no. And she called upstairs and said, you didn't show Griffin your bird. And down the stairs came Albert Einstein with a twinkle in his eyes. And he opened up a cabinet. He brought out this plastic dicky bird with suction cups and wound it up, stuck it on a mirror, and the bird began going with the mirror. And I was, out watching this. And when it hit the frame, it broke the suction and fell into his hand. He said, did you like it? I said, I loved it. And the next morning, I got 3 calls from the women who had been there saying, consider yourself part of the family. So I spent a number of evenings at the Einstein house. And if I'd wanted to meet Albert Einstein, I never could have. It's just one of those miracles that happened. It was Michael Coe who has done, I think, the most work and the most exciting work. And he has many friends, he has many enemies. But he immediately understood that the Olmec was the earliest culture in Mesoamerica. And he worked towards proving that. And he was a friend of a family in Washington named Robert Woods Bliss. And the Bliss collection, he worked on, he advised for the collecting of the Bliss collection. And anyway, for reasons I'm not sure, we became good friends. And at some point, somebody told him that after 1951, that I had seen more pre-Columbian sites than anybody that my friend, ever heard of. So Michael Coe wanted to do a guidebook for archaeological Mexico, and he asked me to be a co-author. And so for 7.5 years, I went to every site I possibly could in Mexico and did sketches and looked at things and so forth. In those years, people didn't care about pre-Columbian art in Mexico itself because it was inferior. And I could see it as some of the great early world art. And so I collected what I could. And in those days, one could bring things back into the United States duty-free, and Mexico didn't care. And so I registered everything I bought and brought things back. In those days, people used Olmec ceramics as targets for rifle shooting. And people didn't really understand that Olmec was the beginning of things in Mexico.
We have Gilett's original sketchbooks from his trips. And Gilett, I'm so impressed with the detail and accuracy. There is one particular drawing that I would like to ask you about because it really fascinates me. The large broken Olmec magnetite mirror. Is it magnet or?
Magnetite.
Magnetite.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And mirrors for the Olmec were sacred things.
They're
And this is a mirror that, because it's concave, it enlarges your face. If you hold it up to your face, you can see every zit. You can see every hair. And you take it away and you flip upside down. And you focus the sun's rays through this, and you can light fires. And the material itself is magnetite, and a little sliver of that on a reed floating will point north. So this is all very magic and very, very, very special. Everything the Olmec did was infused with power, and they were interested in all kinds of extraordinary things, like transformation. There were shamans or people that were working with them who believed that they, through all kinds of abstinence and work, could transform themselves into spirits and go into other worlds, other whole universes, and come back and help their people. And Olmec art is one of the most powerful arts in the whole world, ancient arts in the whole world. When I went to Mexico the second time, I went out to Teotihuacan, and I met this guy, Pedro Hernandez, and I didn't notice that his pants were shapeless, but it turned out that he had half the site in his pants and was offering these things for sale. And finally he said, "Would you like to see something really good?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Come to my house." I thought, wow, go to the house of a real Indian. Wait till the fellows at school hear about that. So anyway, I followed him, and we went to the cinder block house, and he pulled out a shoebox, and out of that shoebox came 8 tiny little figurines with lots of color. Now I thought, this is extraordinary. And I asked him how much they were, and I thought it was going to be about $8, $1 a piece or something. He looked at me straight in the eye, and he said, $400. And I gulped, and I didn't know whether there were friends of his outside or what the story was. Anyway, I said, "They're very nice. Did you make these at school?" He said, "No." I said, "Did your friends make them at school?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, they're very nice, but I'd like to see something real." He said, "Come to my mother's house." His mother had been a model of Diego Rivera, and a very ancient Otomi Indian woman. Anyway, I became friends with Pedro Hernandez and his brother Aurelio. And when I began going out looking at sites, I would take them along, and they were able to talk to the local people about local things, and we got to see things that nobody else could see through them. And so eventually I took Pedro as far south as Santiago, Chile. Anyway, this is another painting of Pedro, and another painting of Pedro, and another painting of Pedro. And then this is a painting of Pedro sitting next to a sort of sacred tree they had. And you'll see a cross-like carving up here with a flower in it. And they would, every day, they would put a little something in that. These 2 on the top shelf are from Veracruz. And both of them are very interesting. This one had a jaw, actually, that moved too. And then this one here had a wheeled base and works this way.
Is this a shaman?
We don't know. He's a warrior, but he's a jaguar warrior. These colossal heads are extraordinary things, and most of them were carried something like 700 or 800 miles by water to sites like San Lorenzo. And they were obviously portraits of rulers, and they might have been stuccoed and then painted eventually.
So which material are they made of? Are they
Basalt.
Basalt.
It's a very hard stone.
Mm-hmm.
And they used probably jade hammers to work them. They might have been, as I say, covered with stucco and then painted, polychromed.
Were they used as talismans, or
We don't really know.
What do you think their purpose was?
They were sometimes buried with the dead, and sometimes these, for instance, were probably buried with the dead. And we don't know what. This is from Mexico, from Palenque. These are all Maya, and this is from Palenque also. And it was broken and just lying in the jungle. Sitting next to me is John Henry Burkhalter, who is a great expert now in pre-Columbian, ancient American musical instruments, and he's going to show you a very interesting whistle from Tlatelolco, which is part of Mexico City and goes back to about 1000 BC.
The instrument that Gilett was describing a few moments ago is this remarkable musical instrument from central Mexico made by the Tlatelolco culture. And it's an effigy, it's a whistle or flute, an ocarina or a silbato. And it's one of the earliest representations of a deity that we later associate with one of the principal lords of the Maya underworld. And this remarkable instrument sounds as follows. Magnificent survivor, and it's one of the few known instruments from this culture.
It's 3000 BC,
Fabulous.
approximately,
It's a fabulous, fabulous musical instrument. This is great.
and 2000 BC. Pardon me.
Wow. Well, it's just one of the many treasures that you're surrounded with.
I remained a painter and still do it. And I just feel that if one is given the ability to do something like this, one should follow through and keep on with it.